So what if the race for global dominance is already over, and we just don't know it yet? Today we're diving into a really detailed analysis that claims to expose China's master plan to become the world's #1 power by 2035. And the big question isn't if it could happen, but if it's already a done deal. Let's break down how this strategy supposedly works.
I want you to just picture this for a second. The year is 2035. The American dream? Well, it feels like something you'd read about in a history book. A gallon of milk costs $20, and families are really struggling to make ends meet. The analysis we're digging into today argues this isn't some sci-fi plot. It's the potential final act of a very deliberate, decades-long plan.
So how on earth could something like this happen? Well, the source material we're looking at argues it wasn't a war fought with tanks and planes. Nope, it was a silent, economic takeover, a calculated strategy set in motion years ago, designed to completely reshape the world's financial map.
Okay, so at the absolute heart of this whole thing is what the source calls relentless economic momentum. This is the engine. It's the powerhouse that drives every other part of the plan, and we're going to look at the numbers that are fueling it right now. You know, just a few years back, the US had a pretty comfortable $6 trillion lead in GDP, but these projections, they show a massive reversal. By 2030, China is on track to just pull ahead, and by 2035, that gap becomes a chasm. China's economy is projected to hit over $49 trillion, with the US trailing way behind at just over $36 trillion. This isn't just growth, you guys. This is a fundamental shift in the entire world's economic center of gravity. And here's the wild part. This whole plan doesn't need some crazy explosive growth to work. It just needs a steady 5% GDP growth rate. That's it. And, well, that's a number China has pretty much hit consistently for decades, with just a few exceptions, like the 5.2% it nailed in 2023. It's that slow, steady, compounding power that makes this economic engine so incredibly formidable.
But, you know, any engine, no matter how powerful, needs fuel. And for China, that fuel is its biggest resource. It's people. So let's see how this plan gets this massive workforce moving.
The sheer scale of China's workforce is just hard to wrap your head around. We're talking 750 million people. That is more than 4 times larger than America's entire workforce. Just on a basic level, that creates an almost unbeatable advantage in manufacturing and industrial power. It's an advantage of pure human numbers. You know, there's this popular idea out there called peak China, the theory that its growth has to slow down soon. But the source material we're looking at says, not so fast, and urbanization is the reason. See, with only 65% of its people in cities, China could still move another 200 or 300 million people into higher-paying city jobs. The US, on the other hand, at over 83% urbanization, has kind of already played that card. China's biggest growth spurt might actually still be coming.
Okay, so the next piece of this plan, according to the source, was just brutally effective. China basically put up a giant sign that said open for business, offering incredibly low wages, we're talking as low as $3.70 an hour, and way fewer regulations. Well, American companies driven by profits jumped at the chance and moved their factories overseas. This was a brilliant two-pronged attack. It pumped billions into China's economy, while at the same time, it systematically hollowed out America's own industrial base, creating a dependency that's still felt today.
So, with its domestic engine absolutely roaring, the plan then shifts to the world stage, and this part is all about buying influence and building up new alliances to create a whole new world order.
And the main tool for this global push is something called the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. Basically, it's a massive global infrastructure project where China invests billions in building roads, railways, and ports in nearly 150 different countries. But it's not really just about construction. It's about redrawing the map of global trade, creating a kind of modern-day Silk Road that makes sure all roads lead back to Beijing.
But here's the catch with all that investment. The U.S. Government Accountability Office puts it pretty bluntly, calling China the world's largest debt collector. The source says that developing nations owe Beijing over $1.3 trillion. And the contracts are often ironclad, so these countries can't just go refinance somewhere else. It's not just a loan, it's a leash, tying these nations to China's political and economic agenda.
And at the very same time, China is building a super powerful coalition through the BRICS alliance. This group of nations now controls a staggering 40% of the world's oil production and represents a massive chunk of the global population. The goal here seems pretty clear. Build a powerful economic club that can challenge and maybe one day replace the Western-led system.
So this brings us to the next front in this conflict.
And this one isn't fought in boardrooms or on building sites. It's fought on an invisible battlefield of data, dollars, and disinformation.
One of the weapons on this battlefield has a weird name, spamouflage. This refers to huge networks of fake Chinese social media accounts that pretend to be Americans. According to the source, their mission is to spread disinformation, stir up political arguments, and just generally create chaos and division within the U.S. After all, a divided America is a distracted America.
And then there's just straight-up theft of intellectual property. One of the craziest methods is something called steganography, which is basically the art of hiding secret data inside a totally normal file. In a real case involving General Electric, an employee allegedly hid classified designs for advanced turbines inside a simple digital photo of a sunset. That photo gets emailed to China, and boom, with a single click, Beijing gets its hands on cutting-edge American technology for free, skipping decades of expensive research and development.
Now, when you first look at this, you'd think, okay, the US dollar is untouchable, right? And for right now, that's true. But the source says this is all part of a very, very long game. For decades, China has kept its currency's value artificially low, and it holds over $3 trillion in foreign reserves, most of it in US dollars. The theory is that down the road, it could start selling off those dollars to boost its own currency, directly challenging the dollar's role as the world's go-to currency.
So, let's pull all these threads together. When you look at the evidence laid out in this analysis, it doesn't look like a bunch of random events. It looks like a comprehensive, multi-front strategy that's been playing out for decades.
The source lays out a pretty clear blueprint. It starts with that relentless economic engine, which is fueled by a massive workforce and a strategy that basically convinced American companies to ship their factories overseas. Then, that economic power is used globally through things like the Belt and Road Initiative and alliances like BRICS. And all of this is backed up by a covert war of disinformation and high-tech data theft. Every single piece is designed to work with the others.
And that leaves us with the final, pretty unsettling question. If this analysis is even partially right, if all these economic, social, and covert pieces are really moving together like this, is there anything that can actually change this trajectory? Or, as the title asks, are we just watching the final moves of a game that was won years ago?